Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru, everybody. Jai Guru. Welcome to the next minute of our podcast about the movie Awake, the Life of Yogananda. We're going through it minute by minute. We have now reached minute number 68, and today we got quite an ensemble. So we don't have Chris today, but we have a representative for Brazil. We have Carolina here. Hello, Carolina. How are you doing?
Hello, everybody. Good to be here again with you all. Thank you for inviting me.
Carolina's got the record now of the most number of guest entries. She's may as well be a regular now.
Yes. And then we also have Michael as a guest here today.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. How are you, Michael? You are in Amsterdam and you fittingly have a bicycle in the background, which is great.
Indeed.
Nice. So you met Priyank at the London Center at a young adults meeting. Usually when we have guests on, we ask them, we have like our standard question is always, how did you hear about Yogananda for the first time? And yeah, how did you get on the path?
Yes. So actually, how I met Yogananda was, I mean, after COVID, it was about a year and a half ago. After COVID, there was a lot of questions in my life where I wanted to go. Spiritually, I was not in tune yet with anything. Like I was Catholic, but again, there was nothing much. I was the policeman. And I couldn't get anywhere with my spirituality. I did not understand it, did not connect with it. And then I started just praying, actually. I was praying mostly on just finding the way, the standard praying Catholics that I had. And then I was just trying to find anything. I was just doing that every day. And then little by little, I got more into yoga. I started to be a little bit more into Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba. And then after that, I joined the satsang, which was just actually a group of people in Montreal that were meditating together, the Twin Heart meditation. And then I met this person. I think I'm gonna send him this video. So his name is Alain, and he just had something very special about him that I couldn't put my finger on. And we just started talking more about spirituality, and he had this really deep, profound understanding that was logical and very new to me. So I kind of dwelled in it more, and then we started talking about Kriya, and we started meditating together. And that's how I got into the path. And after that, it was just got into the lessons, haven't stopped since. I'm on lesson 17, very excited for the initiation. And that's how I got on the path.
When is your initiation?
I don't know yet, because my life has been quite transient lately just because of my work. So I was in London and then I was in this. So I haven't gotten the time, even though I'm not supposed to, I'm supposed to always find time, but I just haven't had the time to really finish the lessons properly, just to have like a quiet place. It's very difficult when you're moving hotel to hotel, really.
Yeah. When I did my initiation, I was worried about this as well. I said to I wasn't practicing the techniques for that for too long. It was only about 6 months, and it was quite intermittent. And before the Kriya, you have an interview with the monk, and then I was a bit worried, so I just told him as it is. And then he said, he said, from what I've heard, you're very sincere. So I think he said Kriya will, you're ready for Kriya. You just have to work on being regular with your practice. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But we have a Kriya initiation ceremony next year in the London Center.
Wow, that's awesome.
So the monks will be visiting for that.
Sounds great.
And how did you find the Awake film?
So the Awake film, I mean, I was reading the book already before I watched it, so I kind of knew what was coming up.
You mean the autobiography?
Yeah, the autobiography. Yeah. Yes. So the movie was kind of, I liked the fact that there was visuals and some audio, so it was really great to see it in real life. Some stories, again, like, you know, as the book, very profound. And yeah, I really liked that movie. Yeah.
Nice.
I so that you mentioned earlier Ramdas and Neem Karoli Baba. Those are names that keep coming up, right? Like Neem Karoli Baba was also, he's also Krishna Das's guru, for example.
Yep. Krishna
And
Das, yeah.
I think he was also the reason why Steve Jobs went to India to seek out Neem Karoli Baba, and then he figured out he had already passed on. Yeah.
So yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, always about seeking. It was just about like, you know, my life prior to COVID. I find that perhaps I was living a lot of lies and I was letting it flow. And then after that was just like, what's going on? You know, trying to find the truth, seeking the truth, living in truth as well. And then once I saw, you know, Master's work and his writings, never looked back, you know, and here we are.
And that is a pertinent point for the subject matter of this minute. Master's writing, isn't that right, Mike?
Indeed,
that is correct.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about the minute 68. So what we have is people talking about Guruji and the amount of writing that he left for us. And so you first have Phil Goldberg talking a bit about it, then even Ravi Shankar, and then he talks about you have Daya Mata and Mrinalini Mata, who were both involved in the writings, and they talk more about how it actually happened, how they were sitting at their typewriters, how there was a routine of every day, because there was a lot of books that had to be written in Guruji's life, especially after he came back from India. So after he came back from India, he had like 10 to 12 years or something where the bigger part of all the literature that he released was basically written. So if you think about it, it's an insane task that he was taking on there. You can calculate how many pages he was writing per day. So it is a lot. Yeah.
Young Carolina has been taking inspiration from Guruji as well recently, haven't you, Carolina? Writing poetry after the convocation. She's written a poem called Divine Friendship, which has been posted around all the groups. And the London Centre Young Adults, Carolina, you won't know this, but absolutely loved that poem. They're like, who is this divine writer?
Lovely. Actually, since I was young, I used to like writing on diaries, but I used to be very, like, some years I would do it, some years I wouldn't. And then it had been a long time since I wrote things. But since I started following this path like a couple of years ago, I just started writing again, like all the time. I even have I keep like a record of my meditations and any experience that I have on the path. I just keep writing. I already have like a couple of writings actually, but like poems were never my thing. That was really the first one. But I don't know, I think convocation is really inspiring, especially like the last day and the day after. It's just really like, it builds up this energy and then you gotta release it.
We like to keep a bit of mystery around when we actually record our episodes, especially for young adults. But of course we are like here. No. I always break this mystery as well. So so we are actually the week after convocation here, and so actually I can also ask the question to Michael. Did you follow convocation at all? Was that your first one? What did you think about it?
So this was actually my third convocation.
Okay.
First one was when I met the Alain. Third one, this has been to me, I would say, the least amount that I followed it. I watched some lectures, but just my life has just been a lot of movements, unfortunately. So yeah, I just watched them later after that, like how I usually do it. If I miss the lectures, I watch them when my time opens up a bit, and then yeah. But convocation is usually where I get the best meditations in, and I'm able to attune with the larger soul family that we're part of. But yeah, this time I just was too crazy for me, at least.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that from other people. And, I mean, I was able to follow convocation myself, but I was up in Northern California for the week, and I really was trying to postpone that or cancel that, but I couldn't. And but still, I think it's always special convocation because you have like so many. So the vibration is just, even if it's online, I feel like the vibration changes for the 1 week, and
For sure,
it becomes easier to be devotional. Yeah. Let's go back to a minute. So the first thing that we have to talk about is the book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, which is, it came out in 1946. It was, back then, received too much fanfare, but I don't think people at the time knew how big of a book this would be. So if you go into like an app that I use often, that's called Goodreads, where you can basically look at your books and just mark the ones that you read and share them with your friends. And of the books released in 1946, it is the most used book on Goodreads. So that kind of shows that how over the years this book has gained popularity. And there's a lot of there's a lot of reviews that were written over the years by people. I'm going to read one right now by a person from the American Institute of Vedic Studies, and he says that Yogananda can be said to be the father of yoga in the West, not the mere physical yoga that has become popular, but the spiritual yoga, the science of self-realization, that is the real meaning of yoga. And I think that's kind of, and that if you go on the yogananda.org website, there's a whole section about the autobiography of a yogi, and you see so many of those kind of reviews of seeing what an impact that book had. Yeah, Priyank?
Yeah, absolutely. I found it, this is going to be a theme for this this minute. I think the titles of the books is quite telling of Guruji's state of consciousness. So for example, this book is called The Autobiography of a Yogi, not Autobiography of Mukundalal Ghosh or Autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda or Autobiography of Yogananda. It says an autobiography of a yogi, which would imply that he's kind of dedicating this book not for himself as this personality that we know as our guru, but to this whole lineage, this vast lineage of yogis and mystical people and self-realized masters and avatars, and, of Christ and Krishna, who he talks obviously a lot about. So I thought that that is telling a lot. And I found it a bit funny that Phil Goldberg, in this book, in this minute, he referred to it as like an Indian holy man, like an autobiography of it's got loads of the book is about holy men. He kind of said it's a genuine it's the first memoir of holy men. And I was thinking about that, and the connotation of the word holy men, especially in, I don't know, a couple of you probably have been to India, I know, and you see the holy men on every single street corner, and you would probably question how holy they are, because they're into various things, and but Yogananda in this autobiography is not really talking about the everyday people that you meet on every single street corner. He's talking about the actual yogi, an actual realized master, which I think there's obviously quite a big difference to that.
Yeah, absolutely. He does say genuine holy man, Phil Goldberg, which I feel like this is maybe as good as he can say it in Western words, right? without calling him a swami or a sadhu or something like that, right? It's pretty interesting that they kind of talk about this this book, and then they I don't know, he's trying to put the it's like you said just now, right? The title, The Autobiography of a Yogi. I feel like autobiographies are like something that is more like being done in the West a lot. I'm not sure if that's true. And the yogi part is more like the Eastern part. So he was maybe trying to merge two concepts into one and really introduce to the world what a yogi really is and how to because I feel like there were a lot of misconceptions about what Indian sadhus are, what Indian yogis are, and I don't think there was really an understanding in the West. And if you really wanted to know a scientific version of what a Hindu yogi is, then the autobiography is a great introduction to that, I would say. Yeah, there were so many other reviews about it. I'm going to read another one that I liked, which is by a journal. It's a metaphysical journal called New Frontier from 1986. And it says, Paramahansa Yogananda, like Gandhi, brought spirituality into the mainstream of society. It is reasonable to say that Yogananda did more to put the word yoga into our vocabulary than any other person. That's how meaningful this book is, even after such a long time. Yeah, Priyank?
It almost warrants a separate podcast just on the autobiography of a yogi, doesn't it? A hint for the future, perhaps.
Yes, I'm for it. I mean, definitely the movie Awake that we are talking about is definitely based on the autobiography of a yogi, right? Even though it focuses on some sections and doesn't talk so much, the autobiography of a yogi definitely has more content than you can put in a movie. I would say it would be more like a trilogy, Lord of the Rings style kind of, if you did the whole movie. But it's definitely related to the two, and I think it would go well in a podcast. Yeah, there's one more thing. There was one. It was like an author's note in the 1951 edition, which is the second edition. Like 1946 was the first edition that came out, and Guruji was involved in the second and the third edition still, where they corrected spelling errors and things like that. And he says, I've been intensely moved to receive letters from thousands of readers. Their comments and the fact that the book has been translated into many languages encourages me to believe that the West has found in these pages an affirmation and an affirmative answer to the question, has the ancient science of yoga any worthwhile place in the life of the modern man? Yeah, Priyank?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned the first edition, obviously, and we're on I don't know which edition we're on, probably like 5th or 6th, I don't know. But a lot of people insist on reading the first edition, even though it's got like spelling errors and stuff like that are still in the released copy. And I was just wondering what you guys think of that. I know I personally just read the latest edition, but for example, the Samadhi poem, there's a few words that are slightly different, I think, probably. The lines are slightly in a different order. There's things like that. So we're not privy to why they changed a lot of some of the things.
I see. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah. I see. That's a very good insight, and so many different religions struggle with that as well. It's like, there's so many versions of the Bible and whatnot, and I do see the beauty in reading the first original versions, but I find that because from my understanding of the lineage that's in charge of SRF. It's these are all lineages that Babaji has chosen. So that's where I put my confidence in. So that's how I see it in that way.
That's a good way of seeing it. Which brings us on to the next point, because the script kind of talks about like the book was about feelings, or Ravi Shankar says the book was about the feelings of his devotion to his gurus and what he really received from them. So like in terms of the other gurus or our Param gurus, or even perhaps the other people that are mentioned in the autobiography of Yogi, like Master Mahashaya, for example, direct disciples of Lahiri Mahashaya, and other people in the book, Swami Kebalananda. I was wondering what people think about how we should treat these other personalities, especially let's keep it specific to our line of gurus. So I think someone once told me that like your connection doesn't need to be, your principal connection to the lineage doesn't need to be through Paramahansa Yogananda. It can be through any of the any of the 6 masters that are on our altar, which one you resonate through most. And Guruji is like, I think he's even said like your love and devotion, all I'm doing is taking it and offering it straight to God and Divine Mother. So I was wondering, yeah, Mike, what do you personally think about that? Because yesterday I was leading the service. I was leading the service yesterday at the center, and I was like, Guruji, read through me or chant through me, and I looked at Guruji, but I thought, oh, there's all these other masters here. Why aren't I referring to why aren't I also referring to those?
I see. I mean, on a more personal level, I think there was a saying in the autobiography which went like, Babaji is the incarnation of Kriya Yoga. Lahir Mahashaya is the incarnation of joy. And then Swami Shri. Yep.
Because Lahiri Mahashaya is the incarnation of yoga.
Okay.
And what's his name? Sri Yukteswar is the incarnation of wisdom.
Yep.
And Yogananda is the incarnation of, is it devotion?
Love, right?
Love and devotion.
Yeah. So
Prem Avatar, we call him.
Yeah.
Prem Avatar,
yeah. Thank you for correcting me. And so if in my life I need more joy or I need more love, or I go through those channels. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Good way of doing it. So more,
mostly,
if you need more wisdom, go to
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Good point. So if I was leading this, if you were leading the service, Michael, which one would you go through?
Wisdom. I don't have enough of that. Yeah, wisdom depends. Yeah, but most likely wisdom. I just need more of that, ideally.
Mike,
it's not easy.
I think it's also a journey. It's not always, the answer is not always the same depending on when you ask it. I do really like that we over the year celebrate all the birthdays and the Mahasamadhis of all the gurus, or of most of them. Like there's no Babaji Mahasamadhi but in general we celebrate all of them, and then you can tune into them, and I feel like I get a response from all of them, and feeling closer to them is I think that's our personal effort that we have to put in. I feel like I put the most effort into feeling close to Guruji, and he's definitely for me the one that I like when I look at the spiritual eye, I feel his presence, and that's because I have been focusing on that for many years. But like through reading and rereading the autobiography, for example, I've felt much more personable and close to Sri Yukteswar and also Lahiri Mahashaya. But I just love that guru-disciple relationship between Sri Yukteswar and Yogananda. That kind of oftentimes when I read those, I kind of feel myself, how would I fare in the role of Yogananda in Sri Yukteswar's ashram? And don't want to answer that, but I really like that kind of dynamic that they have going on. And then the Lahiri Mahashai Babaji dynamic is also really nice. So I feel like over the years it just becomes easier to feel them as close friends. And for Krishna and for Christ, it is more like we had John Mashtami recently, and then you just open your heart to Krishna. And for Christ, I grew up in Europe and I visited many of the holy sites that are out there, like Assisi, for example, or there's many others. And that's when I feel Christ strongly. So I don't think there's like one answer, and definitely every person has their own answer. And for me, if you asked me 5 years ago and now, I would probably also give different answers. But if I would, definitely the strongest connection I have to Guruji. Yeah. Carolina, what do you think about that?
Well, when I started on the path, I mean, Jesus was already a little part of my life. I also grew up in a Catholic culture and all of that. Even though, like, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I was really into it. But then as a teenager and young adult, I wasn't really connecting. But a couple of years before really diving into the path, I started to regain my connection with the Christ. And then when I remember, it was pretty easy to connect with Sri Yukteswar and then Lahiri Mahashaya. I'm looking at the altar to remind me of them. But I remember, like, Babaji and Krishna were the last ones that I actually made myself comfortable with, let's say. I don't know why. I think Babaji, I remember I used to have an impression that he would be more like, I don't know, it's just an ego thing, something in my mind, but I always thought of him of like being more disciplinary than the others onto me. So I was always like, oh Babaji, gotta behave. and with Krishna, I don't know, I was always a Shiva person. So it took me a while to really connect to Krishna, because I really it was never a part of my spiritual path prior to the official one. Before, when I was just going everywhere, it used to be a lot of Shiva all over the place. They even used to call me like, I used to have a name like Shiva Moon, like all of my friends used to call me that. So it took me a while, but through these commemorations with SRF, it really builds up a relationship. Every year it gets stronger and I feel closer to them. So Krishna, for example, it's not, what really helps me is really visualizing them as a person with me, even doing like activities with me, like doing gardening with me, or just, talking to me, really visualizing them as a person speaking to me. Sometimes I even feel the skin in my imagination. And I don't know, that just brings me closer and closer to them, and they feel more and more real, even though they are not materialized.
Never know, eh? With your eyes closed, you never know what's happening next to you.
They might just pop up.
Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, it was more like, in terms of the gurus, it was our guru was really easy to get into. It was just Swami Sri Yukteswar that I thought was very cold, because in the book he sounds so cold, and I'm always like, when I'm about to do something stupid or something, I always have him watching me over my back, and it's just like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this later, So he was, and to this day I still struggle with that, because I think he's such a stronger father figure out of all the gurus that kind of towers over me. And yeah, even though what he says might be really good, sometimes it's really cold, I find, but that's just the way I'm reading it. Perhaps, I need to read the story again to see a better perspective, a more loving one, ideally.
Yeah, and he's got this. Also, his expression is like quite stern, isn't it? On the image that we use is quite a austere, stern, disciplinarian type.
Exactly.
Type of image, whereas like Lady Marshai's image is like this tender, sweet. Looking at it now, tender, 100%. Sweet, like a relative almost.
Yeah, as a kid, when I looked at my parents' altars and I saw Sri Yukteswar's picture, I was always thinking, "Oh no, he's like." But then when you read those chapters, especially the resurrection of Sri Yukteswar, how much he loves his student Yogananda, right? And how he is, he said, like, for example, when Guruji goes up to him and says, "Can you tell me that you love me?" And then he says, like, "Do I really have to use those mortal words to say those things that you know are true already, right?" Mm-hmm. And so he has a different take on love. He's more like connecting with Paramahansa Yogananda on a metaphysical level. And and the years of training in the ashram, also Guruji perceives it as a very loving training, right? So yeah, but he's the one who said ego cannot be uprooted, can only be uprooted harshly, right? So, or rudely. I don't know which word he uses. Yeah. Let's move on to the vast amount of books that Guruji wrote. It is a lot of pages. It is a lot of different publications. And the first thing that struck me when I looked at the bibliography of Yogananda is how late some of those books were actually released. Like Man's Eternal Quest was released in 1982, because I kind of grew up in a SRF household, and those books were around, and I just always assumed those books were around forever. But I guess for my parents, they were on the path already 20 years before those books came.
They had to rely on those magazines.
Yeah.
Keep this page of that magazine, this keep of that magazine, and then put them together. Like, oh yes, we have the Man's Eternal Quest.
Yeah, they had a lot less to go, or The Law of Success came out in 1982 as well. So those are all books that I don't know what to do without them. They are like pillars in my life. And I also wouldn't know how to do a Sunday reading without them. Yeah, pretty fantastic. I want to ask, Kriya, go first.
No, you ask and I'll come in.
I want to ask the group if you guys have a favorite book and why.
My favorite book is at the moment is the God Talks with Arjuna. I don't know, I shouldn't say at the moment. The reason I say at the moment is because I'm so I'm so into Krishna, and I've been reading different versions of the Bhagavad Gita since I was 17. So I've been on this 20-year journey with that book. I've read like probably four or five different translations. And Yogananda's one is obviously by far the most comprehensive and the best. And I've been really, really digging deep into that. So for me, that's the best. But the reason I say at the moment is because I haven't got into the second coming of Christ, or even finished all the lessons, or let alone all these other little books like Whispers from Eternity and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Michael.
Yeah, I was just gonna say on my end, it's Whispers of Eternity, just because I use it every day when I prepare for meditation. So it's super handy when I don't know what to really say, and I just pick a prayer and go with it. So it's utilitarian and the beautiful kind of poetry that I'm able to utter with my words. And I think it's my favorite book so far.
Nice.
And for
Arjuna?
me, I guess I still haven't read, like Priyanka, I still haven't read the two big ones. It's my little library. And so I actually got a lot of books from my sister. She donated like almost all of this. It was her who gave me. And I read the autobiography first, but then when I read this, A World in Transition, it's a blue cover. It's not only Yogananda, it's several authors. It was the book that I was reading when the pandemic struck, and it was really funny because I was traveling and I took the book, and it had been years since I read Yogananda, and I was like, I'll take this Yogananda book for a change, and I took it. And then when I was traveling, the pandemic started, and it was the whole crisis, the whole chaos, and the book was just so timely. It was just like everything was connecting, and it was really the book that took me to the next step in applying for the full lessons, and then finally for the Kriya. So like in general, I say that that's my favorite book because it really got me into being a disciple. But I don't know, Daya Ma's books and Sri Gyanamata's book also, I think in terms of inspiring me and fueling me with devotion, it's really the ones that really get me like, oh my God, this is like so beautiful. And for Guruji specifically, yeah, I could say the Gita is really inspiring also because I don't know, I'm reading the second volume now, and like the first one is here, and I marked like all of these little things, these little
yeah, me too,
so much. And this is really like stuff that I'm connecting with at the moment. I never mark a page just whatever, it has to be something that has to do with my life, and it's just really my life. And I think it's everyone's life happening on the book. It's like the war is going on, you're just like, oh man, I'm really in that war. And it's, I don't know, and every question that comes in my mind after a few weeks or even a month, maybe it's gonna be there, the answer is going to be there. So it's really a tool for moving on in your life with, and help you answer all your questions and doubts about life.
Definitely. I find it interesting that he calls it the God talks with Arjuna, because traditionally it's just called Bhagavad Gita and no one even bothers translating it. Bhagavad Gita means song of the spirit, which like in the book is defined as the divine communion of truth realization between man and his creator, the teachings of spirit through the soul that should be sung unceasingly. But he calls it God Talks with Arjuna, which is an amazing title if you really think about it, because we, in the book, we're the Arjuna, aren't we, in our lives, and God is Krishna. So how are we listening to God talking to us through all of the various walks of our lives? And similarly, like the second coming of Christ is called the second. It's not called like the commentary on the Gospels, which is like the boring official title that you'd generally call it, but it's called the second coming of Christ, the resurrection of Christ within you, which is like a profound title for a book, and obviously it's an epic literary corpus, just that book in itself. And that one is 1,541 pages, and like God Talks with Arjuna is 1,173 pages, and the lessons apparently are 1,400 pages, the 162 old lessons. So all of that I calculated. He spent 4 years in the desert, right, compiling a lot of these books, the Mohit Desert, and that he would have had to write three or four pages a day non-stop to get to all of those.
Amazing. And that's after editing, right? Like usually you write a lot of pages, and then
that's the minimum. So probably even more than that. And that doesn't sound that you probably think, oh yeah, I could write 4 pages a day. That doesn't sound like much. But these aren't just like, if you read Guruji's work, this isn't just like any old piece of writing. I mean, like Tara Mata, who was like the one of the principal editors of the of the books, said Guruji would come to a passage which is so obscure that it defies all possibility of plain interpretation. He will then look blankly at me or one of his other secretaries for a while, close his eyes, and presently out will come the whole plain meaning. He gets it entirely from inspiration. In fact, it is only through him that I know what inspired books really means. So like this is this is not just like, oh, let's philosophize on what theoretically this could mean. This is like, and if you read it, you will obviously know what I'm talking about to be like true. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, just I mean, the word you said there that really resonates with me is epic. Like I've read many books, but there's so much weight in the words of Guruji, and it's like it resonates at such a profound level. I mean, Swami Sri Yukteswar had a way of saying it, which was just saints have a way of saying into a couple sentences what pundits want to say in like volumes of books. And it's so heavy and packed with information, of wisdom. It's always incredible. And the seriousness of it too is a great writer.
Yeah. I really like the title of all of his books. Like, for example, Mike loves The Law of Success, but like, the three epics, which are like Man's Eternal Quest and The Divine Romance, and which is the other one, the third one.
Sayings of Paramahansa Yogananda.
No, not the same. Yeah,
the journey to self-realization.
The journey to self-realization. Those are the three books, aren't they? That are the most popular. But even the other books, like for example, like this is obviously just Cosmic Chants, but Cosmic Chants, what a title! It's such a cool title. And this was like pre. It sounds like, oh, this is just a hippie thing, but this was pre, like. Yes. Pre all of that stuff, right? So this is the hippie culture and the fancy, poetic style of describing things. They obviously took inspiration from Guruji, and like Whispers from Eternity, and like it's just endless, isn't it? How beautiful the titles of his books are. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I want to go back to what you said earlier to God Talks with Arjuna. How that title is interesting because a lot of it is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, right? But it's really has a really strong emphasis on the guru-disciple relationship, the whole Bhagavad Gita, right? And the Bible, for example, is not like that. The Bible, you have Christ, and there is his guru, but for all we know, like if you grow up in Catholic Church, you don't even learn it in that way that John the Baptist was his guru, right? And there's very little emphasis on that. And it's more like about the direct connection to God that they talk about. So I'm like, maybe those titles are also meant, again, I feel like the Second Coming of Christ title is trying to explain to metaphysical seekers what Christ meant, and the same way the Bhagavad Gita is trying to show metaphysical seekers what the Bhagavad Gita really means. He's trying to put it all into context for people, because when there's so many misconceptions about the Gita still. There's even now people saying, oh, Hinduism is a polytheistic religion and stuff like that, right? And I love how he just, the title already puts it into perspective. There's God, there's not, God talks Arjuna.
Yeah, and the ultimate divinity expresses itself entirely through into Krishna, which is quite a beautiful thing. And it would have taken, because like it's such an epic piece of work that it would have taken 50 years to compile and put together into the book. So like the fact that, Mike, you were saying, I can't believe some of these books took 30, 40 years to publish, or 50 years in the case of the Gita and the Second Coming of Christ. And they were so long awaited. But if you imagine like these things were like typewritten and page numbering, and it would have just been absolute chaos. Like and he may have, like, some of it obviously he put it in from talks that he did on various subjects in lectures and stuff. So they would have had to pull material from so many places to compile each verse and each meaning of each verse.
Yeah,
so
I didn't mean it as a criticism. I just meant that I always assumed they were already there forever. I thought they all came out at the same time at during Guruji's life. They came out way later. Yeah. Let's talk about the way. So you hear, I don't know if it's Mrinalini Mata or Daya Mata who says that they wake up in the morning and then Guruji has a typewriter ready, right? And let's get ready and write some text, right? So this is like this kind of routine that they must have had. I know that Sri Mrinalini Mata was like worked closely with Guruji as an editor, and after his passing, she would take over the publishing and was heavily involved there. But I guess during his lifetime, it was more of this waterfall of knowledge that came out of him, right? And they did their best to just write it all down. And I think I read somewhere that they had to take shifts. So they did like 6 hours, and then the next person would come in and start writing things down. The next person, and he would go all night. He would hardly take any breaks because he had so much knowledge that needed to be written onto pages. Priyank?
Yeah, and when you join an ashram, if you have a living guru, and he's like, you join the ashram and you think, oh yes, I'm going to be like, doing so many cool things if I'm joining when guru's around. And literally these Daya Mata, Tara Mata, Mrinalini Mata, they're just typing. They probably didn't even know how to typewrite, but they became like, they must imagine how many words per minute they could do by the end of their training.
Yeah, I don't know how many, but they must have gotten really good at typing really fast.
Yeah, and without mistakes as well, because like if you make a mistake on a typewriter, then you have to start that page again. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, technology was just also, I mean, today you could probably do like speech to text, right? And just and record it all. And I'm sure they did a lot of recordings as well, but it's just so different now. Like back in the day, I'm sure there was also a lot of handwritten notes. And it's like you said, later compiling all of those different sources into one book must be a challenging task.
Yeah,
like into a coherent work. Yeah.
In the film, they've got Paramahansa Yogananda writing, like handwriting, but obviously we don't know how much of that he would have done. It sounds like he would have narrated a lot of it, and they would have typed it.
Yeah, when you go to the Encinitas Hermitage, you see pictures of him writing there. So I there must have been a lot of that as well.
Yeah,
and then it must have been people who were experts at reading his handwriting and everything.
Yeah, they were, those handwriting pictures are probably like, because he used to respond a lot to people that wrote to him, isn't it? So letters, imagine he would have written a lot of letters, and lots of letters do come out on social media, especially, don't they? Just like a random letter or random note or random like signed picture from Guruji, like with like little snippets of inspiration and things like that.
Yeah, and then you hear Mrinalini Mata saying at the end that doing that, like writing the books with him, somehow accelerated the discipline and their training. What do you guys think did she mean by that? That like, because he was on such a mission, and those two were like pulled in, or it might have been others as well that were pulled in and were involved in this. So do you think this kind of accelerated their spiritual progress, or do you think this accelerated kind of their own enlightenment? Kriya?
Yeah, can you imagine if Guruji was like sitting next to you and speaking like 20, 30 words a minute, and you would have to keep up? You can't, there's no time for you to like daydream or like walk out and get a glass of water, or like, as I do when I'm working, just walk around for you know, at least a few minutes in the hour and just, you know, take my royal time. But these devotees would not have been able to do that. They would have to be like absolutely focused, and it becomes like a sadhana. It becomes a practice in itself, doesn't it? It's such an intense thing to be writing, and not just writing like perfectly with what Guruji is saying. Otherwise, you're not doing it justice. Like missing a word here or getting the order wrong would be catastrophic, wouldn't it? And Guruji is not the type of person that would allow. We know how, you know, exceptional his English is. He's not the type of person that would allow misrepresentation of what he has said.
Absolutely.
Carolina.
Carolina.
Oh, you're muted, Carolina. But I think, Mike, you have to go, don't you? I'll take over from here. Jai Guru, okay. Mike.
Jai Guru.
Carolina, tell us, what were you going to say?
I was thinking also that, you know, Guruji, after Sri Yukteswar died, he kind of knew that his time was coming to an end also. So this was like rush to get everything written down, not only written down, but also the acceleration of the training of the devotees who would lead the work forward. So it was really like, you guys need to understand what I say like perfectly to put it on the books, so that so like what she said in the previous minute, to reach people with his pen. And also to train the devotees who would lead the work. They needed to be like full in. And she was like an intensification of our training. I think it has to do a lot with that too. It's just really the final moments with Guruji to get everything done before his Mahasamadhi.
Yeah, Michael, you had your hand up briefly.
Yeah, I was just kind of wanted to mention, as you would be, as the devotee recording these words, you must feel so not only privileged, but the pressure, right? Like, yeah, you're capturing what I would say are profound truths for humanity, literally. And I would say that, you know, being in that state is of just profound mission and just purpose would really accelerate, I mean, your growth spiritually, I would find, you know.
Yeah, I remember when we have like a deadline at work, or I remember at university and school when I had a deadline, and I'd do something like with super intensity for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then like the adrenaline and the high that you'd get from that intense activity, like that, like dedicated, focused effort, was something quite mystical, I think. Because if you put that same energy into meditation or a sadhana that you're doing, like with your guru speaking and you typing, I'm sure you'd get a similar, if not a much more higher consciousness and experience for when that is occurring. So Mrinalini Mata and Daya Mata and Tara Mata that were there were obviously quite privileged, and we know that to be the case from what they say, as Carolina mentioned in there. And there's in the minute, there's also a couple of beautiful pictures of Daya Mata in a very lovely suit, blazer, and a frock, with her looking very young. She must be in her 20s or 30s. And then there's that really famous picture of Guruji and Daya Mata. Daya Mata is like writing something down, looking down, and Guruji is looking straight at her, and you can see she's like really like doesn't want to get anything wrong, and she's just making sure that she's getting it right. And then it's like there's a library in the background, and also interestingly, there's a picture of the first edition of the Autobiography of Yogi at Guruji's left hand. So we know that book he would have seen that book, no doubt, when he was still here with us, with humanity. So that pretty much summarizes the minute, unless anyone else has. Michael, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on just the acceleration of Daya Mata's growth. We kind of touched on the subject a bit, but to me, like, she was one of the, like, when I listened to her lectures and whatnot, the profundity of her emotions and devotion is so touching. It's incredible. And to know that, you know, before this, the way she talks about herself was she was just this quiet girl, scared to talk in public. And then you really sense that it was a profound evolution into her being and into who she is, which I think to me is another proof as to the master's work and his ability of transforming the being.
Definitely. And of course, if you want to hear more about the relationship between the two of those, Daya Mata and Guruji, you can listen on minute 53 for that one. And there's also, we talk about the relationship with Mrinalini Mata and Guruji in the last episode as well. So yeah, you can hear that. But that's pretty much it. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us. It was quite a good. It was quite a good minute, I think. There's a lot.
Thank you for having me. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Michael, no, it was a pleasure to have you. Michael's been holding the phone up with his how much dedication. I think he would have been a good assistant to Guruji, I think, with this much. When's your flight or train back or whatever?
Back to London would be probably next week.
Okay.
So yeah.
Shall see you then. Maybe
yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice. Really nice.
And Carolina, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you once again also.
And everyone else, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Jai Guru.
Bye. Jai Guru.